For 7 years, I live a life I thought was mine, defined by laughter echoing through the hallway of our home, sticky kisses after bedtime stories, and the small hand that gripped mine so tightly whenever he was scared. That hand belonged to my son, or so I believed. I met Emily 8 years ago at a charity fundraiser I had no interest in attending. She wore a red dress that made everyone turn, but it was the way she laughed, unbothered, unfiltered, that drew me in. We talked about nothing and everything that night, and by the end of it, I couldn't imagine walking away without seeing her again. 2 years later, we were married. And a few months into our marriage, Emily told me she was pregnant. It wasn't planned. We hadn't even seriously talked about kids yet. But when she showed me the test, her hands shaking and tears in her eyes, I felt something shift inside me. I was going to be a dad. Ben was born on a rainy Tuesday. I still remember how small he was when a nurse first handed him to me. His eyes were tightly shut, his fists curled up like he was already ready to fight the world. I whispered to him that I'd protect him, that he was mine, and I'd never let anything hurt him. In those first few weeks, Emily struggled. The late nights wore her down, and she seemed distant. But I took to fatherhood like I was made for it. Diaper changes, midnight bottles, colicky nights, I did it all, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Ben became the axis my world turned around. We moved into a quiet neighborhood in Portland when Ben turned 2. I got promoted at my tech firm, Emily started working part-time again, and life was steady. Our weekends were filled with museum trips and messy pancake breakfasts. I taught Ben how to ride a bike, read bedtime stories with silly voices, built pillow forts that took over the entire living room. I even started a journal, notes to Ben for when he got older. Pages filled with proud moments, quiet fears, and all the tiny details I didn't want to forget. But looking back, there were cracks I refused to see. The first came one night when Ben was 4. Emily and I had argued. I can't even remember what about. I went out for a walk to cool off, and when I returned, I found her crying in the bathroom with her phone in her lap. When I asked what was wrong, she brushed it off. "It's nothing. Just a stupid video," she said. But I caught a glimpse of a message on the screen. "We can't keep doing this." He's starting to ask questions. At the time, I convinced myself it was old. Maybe something from before us. Maybe an out-of-context message. We all have pasts, right? And we had a son together. I trusted her. Still, that night stayed with me. Ben started asking about blood types in school when he turned 7. His science class had done a small genetics exercise, and he came home excited. "Daddy, what's your blood type?" I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Oh, negative. Universal donor." He giggled. "Cool. Mine's AB." My heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yeah. Mrs. Thompson tested it in class." That night, I searched blood type inheritance for hours. I tried every combination, every possible genetic explanation. Oh, an AB? It didn't make sense. Not unless Emily was AB too, and even then, it would be nearly impossible. But I still didn't want to believe it. Doubt eats you alive slowly. I started noticing things I never let myself see before. The way Ben didn't have my nose, the shape of his eyes, how he hated the cold when I loved it. None of it mattered to me, not truly. But now it all whispered to me at night. The final straw came a month later. Ben had fallen off the monkey bars at school and needed stitches. When the nurse handed me a consent form, I froze. One of the questions, "Are you the legal or biological parent?" I checked legal. But the word biological burned into my skin like a brand. That weekend, while Emily was out with friends and Ben was asleep, I did something I never thought I'd do. I took a few of Ben's hairs from his hairbrush. I mailed them in for a paternity test. The wait was excruciating. Every smile from Ben felt like a dagger to the chest. Every "I love you, Daddy," made me question if I was a monster for doubting. But the doubt was louder than guilt. When the results came in, I locked myself in the study. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at the number until it blurred. 0. 0. The walls closed in. I couldn't breathe. I dropped the paper and stumbled to the kitchen, where I vomited into the sink. Everything I knew, everything I was crumbled in that moment. Emily found me hours later, sitting on the floor with the test in my hand. Her eyes went wide when she saw it. "You did a test?" she whispered, voice barely audible. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. She sank to her knees. Lucas, I can explain. My voice came out cold. You better. For a moment after Emily whispered those words, I can explain. The room was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. She reached out to touch my hand, but I flinched. Something inside me recoiled, like she was a stranger. And in many ways, she was. You lied to me, I said. My voice was raw, shaking. For 7 years, Emily. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to? I snapped, standing to my feet. The paper crumpled in my hand. You knew Ben wasn't mine, and let me believe. No, made me believe he was my son. You named me as the father on the birth certificate. I had no choice, she yelled suddenly, rising to meet me. You don't know what it was like back then. Then tell me, I said, breathing hard. Tell me who his father is. She hesitated. That silence told me everything I needed to know, but I needed to hear it. Out loud. His name is Jeremy Lang, she finally said. We dated right before you. It was complicated. He was married. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after we broke it off. I felt sick. So, I was just the what? The replacement? The safe option. No, Lucas, you were never that. You were the one I wanted to build a life with. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought about telling you. I wanted to, but I was terrified. I thought I'd lose you. You should have lost me, I said. That night was a war zone. She cried. I yelled. And through it all, Ben slept peacefully in his room. The little boy caught in the middle of a storm he didn't even know existed. Emily swore that Jeremy didn't even know Ben existed, that she had cut ties completely before the pregnancy. And when she saw how happy I was to be a father, she convinced herself this was the best thing for everyone. You're the only dad he's ever known, she pleaded. That has to count for something. It did. And it didn't. The next few days were a blur. I didn't leave. I couldn't. Where'd I even go? I slept on the couch. I barely looked at Emily. But Ben, I couldn't stop loving Ben. That was the cruelest part. He'd still climb into my lap, oblivious, asking if we could go to the park or read where the wild things are again. And I would, every time, even when I felt like I was dying inside. I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I started looking at him differently. Not because I loved him less, because I didn't know how to love him anymore. Was he mine? No, but he was still my son. Wasn't he? One evening, I got a call from my sister, Claire. You sound like hell, she said. I feel like it. I told her everything. She cried before I did. Lucas, I don't know what to say. Do you think you'll leave? I don't know, I said. I wish it were that simple. I know, she said gently. But you need to think about you for once. That stuck with me. For once. Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at Ben's school drawings on the fridge. One showed the 3 of us, him, Emily, and me, all holding hands under a crooked sun with the words "my family" written above. I felt something snap. I pulled out my laptop, opened a search engine, and typed, Jeremy Lang, Portland. The name came up instantly. He was a real estate agent, married, 2 kids. A smiling headshot beamed back at me from the screen like a punch to the face. I stared at it for a long time. Then I made a decision. The next morning, while Ben was at school, I confronted Emily again. I found him, I said. Her face went pale. You told me he didn't know. Maybe it's time he should. Lucas, no. Please, don't bring him into this. He'll want rights. He might take Ben away. Ben's not mine, I snapped. Remember? She collapsed into a chair, hands in her hair. I am sorry. I know I ruined everything. But if you bring Jeremy into this, we all lose. No, I said quietly. We already did. The next week was one of the hardest of my life. I called Jeremy. I told him I needed to meet. He agreed. Probably curious, probably suspicious. We met in a coffee shop downtown. He wore a suit, a gold watch, and carried himself like someone who always had the upper hand. He didn't for long. I'm here because you have a son, I said. His face changed instantly. Excuse me. 7 years ago, you were with a woman named Emily. She got pregnant. She didn't tell you. His eyes narrowed. What the hell is this? His name is Ben, and he's your biological son. Jeremy demanded a test. I expected that. 2 weeks later, it was confirmed. Ben was his. He showed up at our door that Saturday. Emily refused to let him in at first, but I intervened. Jeremy stared at Ben like he was a ghost. Ben was shy, confused, but polite, the way we raised him to be. "Why is this man here?" he asked me later. I didn't have an answer. I was no longer sure I had the right to give one. That night, I stood outside on the porch, watching the wind bend the trees. Emily joined me, arms crossed, voice trembling. "Are you going to leave?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe I should." "Lucas, don't. Don't ask me to stay. Not now. Not like this." She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The silence between us was already louder than anything else. The morning after Jeremy met Ben, everything changed. It wasn't just the atmosphere in the house. It was in Ben's eyes. His questions. The way he glanced at me now. Unsure, like something invisible had shifted and he could feel it, even if he didn't understand it. "Daddy, why did that man say he knew me?" Ben asked while we were brushing our teeth. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth. "He's someone Mommy knew a long time ago," I said carefully. "He found out about you recently." Ben squinted. "But how does he know my name? And why was Mommy crying after he left?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because anything I said would either be a lie or a story he wasn't ready to hear. Jeremy started showing up more. He wasn't aggressive or rude. In fact, he was unervingly polite. He brought gifts, asked to join for school pickups, wanted to take Ben to the science museum. Emily resisted at first, but she was running on fear that he'd file for custody, that he'd rip the fragile peace apart with legal threats. He hadn't yet, but he wasn't going away either. I felt my role slowly eroding, like the tide pulling grains of sand from under my feet. I was still there, still helping with homework, still packing lunches, still reading bedtime stories. But now there was someone else, someone with DNA, and I was just the man who didn't know the truth until it was too late. Emily and I barely spoke anymore. We were ghosts passing each other in the kitchen. I started sleeping in the guest room permanently. Our marriage was shattered glass, beautiful once, but dangerous to touch now. One night, I heard Ben crying in his room. I rushed in. He was curled in bed, clutching his stuffed bear. "Daddy, am I in trouble?" I sat beside him, hard in my throat. "Why would you think that?" "Because there's so many secrets, and people keep whispering when I walk into rooms." Are you mad at me?" I pulled him into my arms. "Ben, none of this is your fault. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Nothing will ever change that." He looked up teary-eyed. "Then why do I feel like everything is breaking?" "Because it is, son." I wanted to say it, but I didn't. Instead, I just held him tighter. I started therapy, secretly. Claire recommended someone, a man named Dr. Willard who specialized in paternity trauma. I didn't even know that was a thing. But apparently, it was more common than anyone talked about. "I feel like I'm being erased," I told him in our third session. "Because of Jeremy?" he asked. "Because of the truth," I said bitterly. "Because every time I look at Ben now, I see what I'm not." Dr. Willard leaned forward. "But what are you?" "I'm the man who changed his diapers, who taught him to swim, who stayed up with him through fevers and nightmares. But I'm not his real dad. Not anymore." He paused. "What makes someone a real dad, Lucas?" That question haunted me for days. Things came to a head 2 weeks later. Jeremy asked if he could take Ben for a weekend. A full weekend. He framed it as bonding time. "Just two guys who didn't know each other," he said. Emily hesitated but said yes. I didn't. "You don't even know him," I said to her that night. "He's his father, Lucas." "No," he snubbed. "I'm the one who raised him. I'm the one who stayed." She turned away. "I didn't ask you to." That hit harder than any slap. I left the house that night. I stayed with Claire for a few days. She didn't ask questions. Just gave me the guest room and a bottle of whiskey. "You know," she said one night as we sat on the porch, "you can walk away. No one would blame you." "I would," I said. "Ben would." "You're not obligated, Lucas. You didn't sign up for this." "Did not," I whispered. The second I held him in that delivery room, I did. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Then fight for him. But make sure you're doing it for him. Not because you feel guilty, or angry, or betrayed." I nodded. But deep down, I knew I was doing it for him, and because I still loved him, more than anything. When I came back home, I found Jeremy in the living room. He was sitting on the floor, playing Legos with Ben, laughing, looking comfortable. Ben looked up. "Daddy, we're building a robot." I smiled. Forced. "That's awesome, bud." Jeremy stood, wiping his hands. "Lucas," he said, "can we talk?" We stepped into the backyard. "I'm not here to take your place," he said, "but I want to be part of his life." I stared at him. "You already have, whether I like it or not." He sighed. "I don't want to make this a war." "Then don't file for custody." He looked surprised. "I haven't, but you're thinking about it." He didn't deny it. That night, I made a choice. I sat Ben down and told him the truth, as gently as I could. "Ben, you know how families can be made in lots of ways. Some by blood, some by love." He nodded. "Well, I didn't make you with Mommy. Someone else did. But I was there the day you were born. And I've been your dad every single day since. Nothing changes that. Nothing ever will." His lip trembled. "So you're not my real dad?" "I'm your forever dad," I said, choking back tears. "That's what matters." He threw his arms around me and cried. "I don't want another dad," he whispered. "I want you." 3 days after I told Ben the truth, he stopped calling me daddy. He didn't call me anything at all. He wasn't cold. He didn't pull away physically. But something had changed behind his eyes. Not anger, not rejection, just confusion. Like he was rearranging his whole world and couldn't find where I fit anymore. It broke me more than I thought possible. Emily tried to fix it. She sat with Ben, explained that mistakes had been made, that I was still his dad in all the ways that counted. But the trust had been fractured, not just between me and Ben, but between all of us. Jeremy's presence didn't help. He began coming over more frequently. Not uninvited, but not exactly welcomed either. Sometimes he'd show up with new toys. Other times, he'd ask to take Ben for ice cream after school. He was playing catch-up, trying hard, too hard. I'd watch from a window as Ben laughed with him. It gutted me, because part of me hated Jeremy, and part of me hated myself for hating him. One afternoon, I received a letter from a family law firm. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside, a formal notification. Jeremy was requesting parental rights. Not custody. Not yet. But the door was opening. Emily was furious. She called him, yelling into the phone so loudly I could hear it from the hallway. "You said you wouldn't do this, Jeremy." "I'm not taking him away," I heard him say, "but I deserve to be recognized. I'm his father." When she hung up, she turned to me, eyes red. "We have to fight this." I blinked. She paused. "Lucas, I know I destroyed us. But Ben, we both love him. He needs us. I'm not doing this for you," I said quietly. "I know, but please, don't walk away now." I didn't answer, because walking away had never been harder. I met with a lawyer the next day. "Your name is on the birth certificate," she said. "You've acted as the child's father his whole life. That gives you standing. But I'm not his biological dad." She shrugged. "Parenting isn't just DNA. Courts know that. But if you want to remain his legal father, you'll need to petition for custodial rights too, in case Jeremy pushes harder." It felt like I was gearing up for war. Over a boy I had raised. A boy who once ran in my arms just because he missed me after school. And now, I had to prove I was worthy of staying in his life. Ben started asking deeper questions. "Was Jeremy your friend?" "No," I said. "Did you know about me when I was born?" "No, I thought I did. But I was wrong." He frowned. "So, was Mommy lying to both of you?" "Yes," I said gently. But she thought she was protecting everyone. He went quiet. Then, "Can I still call you Daddy?" My throat tightened. "Only if you want to." He smiled faintly. Edo. One evening, I came home to find Jeremy in the kitchen. Emily had let him in. Ben was upstairs. Jeremy stood as I entered, trying to keep his tone level. "I never wanted to make this ugly," he said. "But I won't be cut out." I nodded. "And I won't be replaced." We stared at each other for a moment. 2 men, 1 child, and a wreckage of silence between us. Then Jeremy said something that surprised me. "I see the way he looks at you. That bond. I can't compete with it. And maybe I shouldn't." Then dropped the filing. "I'm not sure I can do that either." "Why?" I asked. "Because I want to matter." I looked down. "Then earn it." the way I did. The next week, the judge called for mediation. We all sat around a large wooden table. Me, Emily, Jeremy, and a court-appointed mediator. I had never felt more exposed in my life. They asked about Ben's routines, his emotional stability, his relationship with each of us. I spoke first, detailing the things no court record could show, how he had night terrors after a thunderstorm, how he still believed in the tooth fairy but pretended he didn't, how he hated peas but would eat them if I made silly spaceship noises. Then Jeremy spoke. I wasn't there, but I'm here now, and I want to be part of his life. I'm not trying to erase Lucas. I just want to be included. Emily spoke last. She cried, took full responsibility, apologized again. The room went silent afterward. That night, Ben crawled into bed with me. I hadn't seen him do that in weeks. He wrapped his arms around my chest and whispered, I don't care who made me. I just want you. And that moment, it was everything. Every diaper, every game of tag, every sleepless night. It meant something. It still did. A week later, Jeremy withdrew his petition. He agreed to a shared visitation arrangement, informal, flexible, and based on Ben's comfort. The judge supported it. No custody battle, no blood wars, just coexistence. Emily and I, though, we didn't fix things. Some breaks don't heal right. We began discussing separation. We agreed to keep it civil for Ben, but we knew the center had collapsed. Still, I stayed close, stayed present, because Ben needed one thing more than anything else, stability, and I'd rather lose a marriage than lose him. 2 years passed. In that time, the life I once knew, the life I thought was unshakable, changed completely. Emily and I finalized our divorce with quiet signatures at a courthouse neither of us wanted to be in. There were no screaming matches, no final betrayals, just a final, irreversible understanding. Some wounds run too deep for love to survive them. She moved into an apartment 10 minutes away. We shared custody of Ben, officially, legally, and practically. Jeremy, to his credit, respected every boundary we set. He took Ben for ice cream every other Sunday, showed up to soccer games, helped with science projects, even once took us both to a monster truck rally. It was awkward, but Ben was glowing that night. That was all I ever cared about. Ben turned 9 last month. He asked for 2 birthday cakes, one at Emily's, one at my place. He invited both Jeremy and me to both parties. He didn't want to choose, so we didn't make him. At my house, I made his favorite, chocolate cake with cookie crumbles and extra sprinkles. I sang off-key. He laughed so hard milk came out his nose. Jeremy sat beside me, clapped along, and helped take pictures. It was weird, but it was okay. One evening, I sat with Ben on the porch. The sky was turning violet. He was quiet, staring at the stars. Do you miss when we all lived together? He asked suddenly. I nodded. Sometimes. But things change. That's okay. He leaned his head against my arm. Do you still love Mommy? I thought about it. In some ways, I always will, but not the same way. He nodded like he understood, like he'd already figured out that grown-up love is messy, complicated, not always forever. Then, do you think Jeremy loves me? I turned to him. I think he's learning how, and that's a good thing. And you? I smiled, kissed his hair. I never had to learn. I just did. The journal I started when Ben was a baby is now 3 notebooks thick. I write in it every week. Sometimes I write what I wish I could say to him. Sometimes I write what I did say, because I know someday he'll want to understand the quiet moments between the chaos. One of the entries from last fall reads, You are not mine by blood. You are mine by every scraped knee I bandaged, every math problem we solved at the kitchen table, every hug you gave me when I didn't even ask. You are mine in the way you call me Dad without thinking twice. And I am yours in the way my heart breaks when you cry and soars when you smile. That is what makes us family. Ben doesn't ask about DNA anymore. He doesn't ask who's real and who's not. He just is. He plays, learns, grows, laughs. He loves all 3 of us in different ways, Emily, Jeremy, and me. But when he scraped his knee last week and cried, he called out for me. That was all I needed. One Sunday, I stood at the park watching him climb the jungle gym. A stranger beside me said, Your boy's got energy. I nodded. Yeah, he's all heart. The man smiled. You two look alike. I chuckled softly. Not really. Sure you do, the man said, shrugging. You've got the same eyes. He walked away before I could say anything. But I stood there, watching Ben laugh at the sun behind him, and realized. Maybe we did. Because love leaves traces, even where blood doesn't. And in the end, I wasn't the father. I was his father. And that was enough.